What up? What up? What up? Peace. Okay, yeah, Crow. Now, I recently was on the pan-Africanism strikes back. His stream that he had. He's usually some pan-Africanist guy who try to seek clout from Dane, Calloway. Trying to grow his YouTube channel. But I seen him on there talking to some sister, trying to talk her down about her representing her Indian heritage, and I came on the panel briefly, and they were, and I was pretty much in support of what the sister was saying because they keep trying to perpetuate this ideal that we are all from Africa, and that's just not true. So I'm on there, and they asked me, "What were you from, and your family, and all that?" And I tell them. And then they say, "Can you name anybody in your tribe?" What do you mean, can I name anybody in my tribe? My family, my mom, my dad, my cousins, my brothers and sisters, they all a part of people I can call and name in my tribe. Who can you name? What family members you can name from Africa? That's my question to you. What family? You got any sixth or fifth cousins over in Africa? Okay, why don't you find out then? You know what I'm saying? So that's my whole point of this is to tell you that you can find out where your family from, not where black people from. Where you from? Don't pay attention to looking at where black people from. Look at your family records and find out where you from. Prove that you're from Africa. Prove that your family is from Africa. Period. That's all you have to do. Look at the lineage. Don't look in his storybook or the white man's storybook, the indoctrination, because those are stories. Those are fictional stories. They have no standing in law. You can't go in a courtroom with a fucking history book and say, "I'm from Africa, give me reparations," because they tried that in the 60s and the 70s and it didn't work because the judge couldn't prove to himself, or they couldn't even, or the people couldn't even prove to themselves that they were from Africa because their documents didn't reflect that. Their family lineage didn't reflect that. So all I'm saying is they want to teach you that you're from Africa in school, but then your family documents don't reflect that. Why don't you just prove it to yourself? Stop trying to prove everybody else, black people. Just focus on you yourself. Don't focus on me. Don't focus on Dane Calloway. Prove to yourself that you can actually go back to a place in Africa and call your home. Because they documented everybody that came off of them steamboats. That's the only documentation that they got of Africans coming over here in America. Back in the 1619 or whatever, the Virginia Company of London. This is my source. The Virginia Company of London. The congregation for propagating the gospel or whatever like that. You can find that, and you can find those documents connected to how they came over here in the National Archives. I just gave you the source, and on them vessels, on them vessel boats, they list every single African slave, all of the Africans, free and the ones that were slaves, that came over here on them boats. They documented all of them. So if you came from Africa, look into your family lineage, go all the way back from your family lineage, Don't focus on black people, focus on you. Paper trail yourself back and find out if one of your families came off of one of them vessels. Because they documented everything. And this is my point. Don't go into no other person's book and all that stuff. Go from your lineage. Your family lineage is your source. That is your source. You want to ask me what's my source? That I'm indigenous to this land? Yeah, it's my family records, by the way. My family. That's my source. And your source should be your family too. Not what nobody else is telling you in these goddamn schools. Your family Your family is your source. Your family records, your lineage, that's your source. That's you proving who you are, where your family is from. So if you can prove to me that you got a family member that came off of one of those boats, because they documented everything. Everybody who came from Africa, they documented. Okay? So if you can prove, you can trace one of your families back to one of them North African pale-skinned slaves, then yeah, you're African. You can say, you can call yourself an African American. But if you can't, then you can't call yourself an African American. You're only an American. And they had African slaves and they had American slaves. The African slaves were first, and then later on, the American slaves, Indian slaves, was more later on. But it was a majority of the African white slaves, was the American Indian slaves, the American Negro Indian slaves, so-called black people. So if you can prove that you have an African slave that came off of one of them boats in the U.S. National Archives that documents everything, then you can call yourself an African American. Okay? Period. Stop walking around here calling yourself African American because of some crap you read in his storybook. How are you going to prove it to yourself? How are you going to prove it to yourself without documents? And now some of you can prove it to yourself, but you, don't listen to nobody else. Focus on you. Prove that you came from Africa by looking at your family records, because that's the only primary source. Nothing cannot tell you about your family than you looking at your family records. You think they're going to go in school and tell you about your family? Now, they can tell you you're from Africa, but they can't tell you your family members by name. Only you can look at your family records and prove that you have an African slave. An African slave. Let me repeat it. You had American slaves and you had African slaves. American slaves and you had African slaves. American slaves came later on. The Virginia Company of London, the Congregation for Propagating the Gospel. That is the source. Look that up. They have the vessel list. National Archives got that record of all of the African slaves that came off of those vessels. This is my point. This is the only point I'm going to make. You can invite me on a panel if you want to. We can debate. We can get this debate on. But you have to prove that you are from Africa. Because as far as I'm concerned, majority of the so-called black people, the so-called misnomered African American, is indigenous. The majority of us are indigenous to this land that we now call America. That means North, South, and Central America. You have to prove that to yourself. What else document that you're going to bring up? You're going to bring up some Google search or some shit like that. And you cannot say genealogy DNA test, because I'm going to break that down right now. Genealogy DNA test cannot confirm where your ancestors come from. That whole ancestry composition part you see, where you see you European, you this amount of European, you this amount of African, that does not confirm that you actually have African relatives. It doesn't confirm that you have European relatives, and it doesn't confirm that you have any type of relatives. What that test simply means, that is a test that compares all of the living populations on the planet and how similar they are as a human species, not who you are related to or who you descend from. Genealogy DNA tests are not maternity DNA tests. Maternity DNA tests are the tests that can confirm whether if you're blood related to somebody. Okay, genealogy DNA tests cannot do that. When they was first started this shit, doing this databases of collecting DNA, they were collecting from the main populations of the earth: the Negroid population, the Mongoloid population, and the Caucasoid population. And then you had the Australians or whatever like that, you know. And then you had these groups of populations that they started, and then you had they went over here and tested those small foreign Native American populations, but didn't even consider the freaking other groups of people that was already over here. They just want to slap them when they only Native American, which they're not even indigenous to the Americas anyways. The people that you now see with the fucking long straight hair that look like mixed and all that stuff, those are not full-blooded Indians. They're not full-blooded Indians, and most of them aren't Indians, period. They're foreigners. They came from the Native American Party, okay? You know what I'm saying? That's what that term really came from. Native Americans are not Indians, all right? So stop trying to lump them up in the same group. They're not the same. Now, you, Brandon, or whoever your name is, or if that's your name, or if I was confusing that with somebody else's name on the panel, the host, Pan-Africanism Strikes Back, prove that you are from Africa, not from no other book, not from no other source. Look at your family lineage, your family records. Go back. Grandparents, dinner. And just because you had a slave in your family doesn't necessarily mean that they were from Africa, because they had African slaves and they had American slaves. They are two distinct different groups of people. Okay? So, like I say, we were enslaved. Some of our people were slaves. They were employees. They were working to either get land or either get their land back from the fraudulent loans that were placed on them by these foreigners. Okay? And you can look in the National Archives, look at the vessel boats list of all of the Africans that came over here, and you can literally find out if you're connected to one of them people. Period. If you can't do that, don't come and start trying to tell people that they from Africa. You know what I'm saying? All you people who's listening to those videos, prove it to yourself. Don't worry about Dane Calloway. Don't worry about Pan-Africanism Strike Back. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about none of these black leaders and none. Prove it to yourself. Prove that your family comes from Africa. Your family is the only primary source. No goddamn other Google source. None else but your family. Your family. That's your goddamn tribe. Your family is your damn tribe. All right? So that's all I want to say. You want to bring me back on the panel? I see a little live stream. I can come back on and debate you anytime. I'm not no huge YouTuber or whatever. I don't even make videos like that anyways. But I just seen that and I thought it was interesting. And yeah, I watch Dane Calloway videos. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Dane Calloway blow anybody out of water who want to debate. You know what I'm saying? Because he got primary sources. The same motherfuckers that's teaching you from Africa. How come that don't reflect in their documents? You can claim that you from Africa and say this and that. But, you know what I'm saying? They documented everything. So how come it doesn't reflect in your document? How come it doesn't reflect in your family documents? If you came off of one of those boats. They documented everything. And just because they use the term Negro on some of those documents doesn't necessarily mean that they are referring to Black Africans. They use Negro for all different colored people on the planet. Negro and Negras. Okay? The first, that whole thing where they say they brought 20 and some odd Negras. And then they tried to change it in these historical documents to say African, but in the National Archives and in Spain, they say Negros from the West Indies, that they refer to as the Caribbean area right now. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Not Africa. Not Africa. The Middle Passage was was happening, which is what they are now trying to call the transatlantic slave trade, and that's completely separate. That's some fiction. That's some fictional stuff. And if you want to say transatlantic slave, you apply that to the North Caucasian Africans, Europe, all that stuff that came over here during that time. That's their transatlantic slave. That has nothing to do with us. The Middle Passage was from the movement of from South America to North America, South America to all over the Americas, and only the Americas. The Middle Passage only took place in the Americas, not from Africa to America. Period. And that reflects in what? What sources am I getting this from? U.S. documents. U.S. official documents. U.S. official documents. It can't get no sorcery than that. Okay? What other source you gonna use? What other source are you going to use that's gonna confirm that your family, not black people, your family, not these fictional Africans, your family, you and your family members, not these fictional Africans that were brought over here in slave ships and all this stuff like that. And then slave ships, they didn't even exist during that time. All right, you might want to look up you might want to look up water vessels and see what year they came out before you begin to. That's how you know that's a motherfucking fictional story. But anyways, this is to you, man. Prove that you and anybody else watching this video, prove that your family came from Africa. Look at your family lineage. Stop letting people confirm where your family came from and you ain't even looked at your family or even talked to your elders yet to know where you came from or whatever. Look at your family lineage and find out where your family is from. Now, some people can prove that they got lineage that stem from Africa or whatever like that. But before you start looking at their stuff and talking about they prove, nah, family records, okay? Family records. How can you prove to yourself that you're from Africa? Because you can say, oh, we came from Africa. What are we, slaves? Try to go to court, try to do a whole reparations thing. What are you going to have? How's the judge going to prove to himself that you had an African slave and that you deserve reparations? How are you going to prove that to yourself? By looking at your documents. That's how you're going to prove it to yourself. That's your proof. Your family documents. Your family is your proof. Don't sit here and fucking tell me what proof do I have. I got my family fucking records. That's my goddamn proof. The fucking U.S. documents. That's my goddamn proof. National Archives. That's my goddamn proof. Not no Google articles and no fictional papers that's published in the fictional section of fucking libraries. No, the National Archives recorded every damn thing, nearly everything on you and your damn family and where y'all came from. And now they trying to flip this shit around and say that we came from Africa. The majority of us came from Africa, when that's not true. It doesn't reflect in your documents. So yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? Prove it. Prove it.